Hello and welcome to Colour Multimedia Enterprises. My name is Luke, also known as Tianery, and in this tutorial we are going to take a look at drawing bitmap images onto the game screen using Linc SDL. So, without further ado, hello, and as mentioned in the introductory video, we are going to be taking a look at being able to draw bitmaps onto the screen. So I've prepared for this tutorial video, I've got this assets image Hakes logo BMP file right here in that folder that I just mentioned, and let's get started, shall we? So I've imported a few things that we'll be needing to use. So we've got sdl.rwops, sdl.surface and sdl.texture, so we'll take a look at that in a moment. So what we first want to do is probably we probably want to create a separate function for this. So I'm going to call this function draw for the time being. Oops. What am I doing? Right, there we go. And what I'd like to do is drag this out. We want to drag that out. Put that in there. The reason why, and I'll show you in a moment, is because our event loop needs to be separate from our drawing. So if I were to now just put in draw here like that, it won't make any difference whatsoever. So essentially all that's really happening is every time we draw something, we will, of course, just draw it once instead of drawing it multiple times every time something happens. So every time we wanted to change an object location, for example, via a keyboard event, what we would probably do is we would do if e.keysim blah blah blah, right? And let's say, for example, you pressed down the D key. What you would do is you would adjust the object X position, for example, and then just call the draw function. It just makes things a lot easier and a lot cleaner. So that's why we would want to do that. So now that we've got that bit out of the way, what I'm going to do is I am going to give you an example of how to load a bitmap image into onto the screen. So first of all, we want to get the file, which is going to be an rwops. And this file is going to, we are going to be using a function. I can't even remember what the function is now. Let's scroll up a bit. Hang on. Yeah, rw from file. So rw from file. So there's two different ways in which we can do this. We can do rw from file, which is the function I'm using now. I'm going to be using the .. to go outside of the bin folder and inside of the assets folder, because obviously that's where our application is going to eventually go, because obviously we've got main.exe. Got to move out of the bin folder into the assets folder, image folder, and then hakes.-logo.bmp. Oops. And then what we want to do is we want to actually create a surface to put this file that we've just loaded on, right? So we want to create a surface, and that is going to be, once again, I forget how to do it, sdl.load bmp_rw. So that is going to be like this, and we pass in the file followed by an integer of 1. Oh, and I also forgot to, oops, pass in a string here, which is supposed to be RB. Don't ask what that means, because I don't know. There's probably something on the SDL docs that probably describes what that means. So let's, and again with the integer, I don't actually know what that means. So I'll probably take a look into that for you in a moment. First of all, we want to just create a texture from a surface. So what I'm going to do is say var texture, it's going to be a texture, then we're just going to say sdl.create texture from surface. As you can probably tell, auto completion, I decided to disable it because it started to annoy me. So we need to pass in the renderer, so wherever we're going to be rendering the image to, what we probably want to do is actually place this in here for the time being. And in here, what I'd like to do, I need to, of course, pass in that surface, right? Because that surface now has the image that we want to put on. Now, if I were to save and build this, I don't think it'll work. It might do. I didn't actually test this, but so I could be wrong. But let's just take a look anyway and see the result. I don't think it will display because we haven't actually copied the surface yet. So yeah, didn't think so. So because we haven't copied the surface onto the renderer, it's not actually rendering the image yet. So we need to use a function called sdl.renderCopy, or renderCopyEx. I'm going to use renderCopyEx for the time being. So we need to pass in the renderer once again. We also need to pass in what texture we want to copy. We also need a source destination. I'm going to leave that null, so it basically copies the entire texture. And the destination, so that is going to be an x position of 0, a y position of 0, and the width and height is 230 pixels by 230 pixels, which is the exact height and width of the image that we're going to be displaying. We've also got a few other parameters, so we've got angle. I'm going to leave that at 0 for the time being. There's also another parameter here which I'm just going to leave null. I can't remember what that was now. Let's take a look. So that's angle, which is 90 degrees for this example here. I'll show you that in a moment. What was that called? Let's have a look. So we are looking for render copy EX, which is here. Oh, center. So that basically identifies the center point of the image. So if we were to rotate it, it will rotate from that point. So if you were to set that to 0, 0, that will rotate from that point, that center point. And then we've got flip as well, so we can actually flip the image vertically or horizontally. For the time being, I'm just going to leave that as SDL underscore flip underscore none, right? So I'll show you the rotation and the center point in a moment. If you put it at null, it will automatically set the center point to whatever the width and height divided by 2 is. So the center of the actual image itself, basically. Okay, so now that we've got that, it will display onto the screen. So let's take a look. Let's build the application, execute it, and now we've got a bitmap image on the screen. So what if we wanted to rotate it? It's pretty simple. Let's say we wanted to rotate it by 90 degrees. So we'll do that. Let's rebuild that. Execute. Oh, interesting, it didn't actually oh! Wait, does that look different? Yes, it does, because obviously this bit here is slightly darker, so it has actually successfully rotated. That's my bad. As you can see, we could rotate it by 45 degrees just to make it a bit more visible, because obviously the image is exactly 230 by 230. So, okay, there you go. So it's successfully rotated, as you can tell. Now, what we can do is put a different point in here. We could say x0 and y0, which is the SDL rect or SDL point that we could, which is the center point of the rotation. I believe it's rotation. Yeah. So it's rotating from that point now, so it's no longer rotating from the center point, as you can see. So if you left that at null, it will just default to essentially x 115 and y 115, which is exactly which basically results in the same thing that we saw just now. So let's take a look at that now. So yeah, there you go. Probably get rid of that line, that's kind of annoying. Like that. Build. Display, there we go. So that looks a bit easier to see now. So now that we've got that out of the way, there's also something else that I said I was going to show you, which I completely forgot. I was going to mention something and I can't remember. Oh yeah, we can do flipping as well. So if we just do SDL flip vertical, for example, get rid of that rotation, just for the purposes of showing you how that vertical flip works. So as you can see, the image is being flipped upside down, and the same with horizontal as well. You just replace the end bit with horizontal, like that. Rebuild it. And now it's been placed horizontally. Now, there's a bit of a catch here. The reason why is because every time we wanted to, let's say, move that image left and right using the keyboard, and we kept doing the draw function, we would keep on reloading that image over and over and over and over again, and it would present some performance problems eventually when this program starts building up. So what we probably want to do is create a separate class to put all of this stuff in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm going to put bitmap in here like that. Get rid of that package because we don't need that. And we are going to extend object, right? Because obviously that's this object here. And in the public function new, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in a file string, which is where we're going to get that bitmap image from. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply cut this, put it all in here. We need to import a few things first before we can actually start using it. So our wops, import SDL surface, and import SDL texture, like that. Okay. So now what we probably want to do is we want to get that texture, private texture like that. So we'll I'm just gonna get rid of this bit here, make it a private var variable within this bitmap. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to override our public draw function, which of course is going to get a renderer from somewhere. Where is that going to be? You guessed it, state.renderer from our main.hx class. So I am going to just put that in there like that. So now what I'd like to do is just simply use I need to import SDL, and all I'm really going to do is do exactly the same thing that I did with this. So I'm just going to cut this and put it in here like that. Now obviously this is specifically for this case here, but let's just place that file thing there. We probably want to, I'll call that IO for the time being. Okay, so now all we do is in our main we create our object outside of the draw function instead of inside. So we'll say so we'll do private static var BMP, which is going to be a bitmap. I'm going to say BMP is equal to new bitmap, and we are going to pass in that file once again, image x-logo.bmp, and then what we want to do is in our draw function I am going to say bmp.draw and then pass in state.renderer like that. And we also probably need yes, we'll put in a renderer here as well, so that we can use that for creating the texture as well. So we'll go into here, pass in state.renderer so that it can do that. Okay, so now this should still build without any problems. Oh, yes, of course. Whoopsie, no. What am I doing? Need to do the super so that we can call this public function new here. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is, instead of use width and height, and I believe you can actually identify whether there's a width and height for this image. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll take a look at that in another tutorial. So BMP is equal to new bitmap state renderer. So yeah, what we probably want to do now, because we've now modified that, we'll just pass in 230 to the width and height for this object. Oops. And then build, and then identify our state. Where is it? Oh, there. Alright then. So it's still doing exactly the same thing that it did. So that is all good. So that's a tutorial. We probably want to revert that back to SDL flip none for the time being. But yeah, that is a tutorial on how to load bitmap images onto the screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.